You know that feeling when you walk into a beautiful old house, all that charm, the incredible detail, it just feels perfect, right? But what if all that charm was just hiding a bunch of deadly secrets? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take a tour of the perilous past and uncover the hidden killers that were lurking in, literally, every single room.
Okay, so think about the Victorian and Edwardian eras. This was a time of huge progress, right? You've got all these new technologies, new things to buy, everything promising to make life better, easier, more modern. But here's the catch. A lot of this stuff was brand new. It was totally untried, completely untested, and that meant all this progress brought some seriously scary dangers right into the home. So, where do we start our tour? Well, let's start with the very fabric of the house itself. The walls. I mean, you'd think they're just there to hold the roof up and look nice, right? But back in the 19th century, yeah, those walls could literally be trying to kill you. The Victorians were absolutely obsessed with wallpaper, especially bright floral patterns. And one of the hottest colors, the absolute must-have shade, was this incredible, vibrant green. It was called Schill's green. I mean, this was the color. Everybody who was anybody had it, from the middle class all the way up to the most famous artists of the time. So what was the secret to getting that gorgeous green? Well, here's the deadly twist. It came from something called copper arsenite, and that is a pigment just jammed packed with arsenic. Now, get this. If the room got damp, the wallpaper would actually start releasing arsenic poison into the air as a gas. So you'd have people getting sick, really sick, with these mysterious illnesses. Doctors had no idea what was going on until they slowly pieced it together. The beautiful walls were literally poisoning entire families while they slept. Now, you'd think once people figured this out, that would be the end of it, right? Nope. The danger wasn't accepted right away. In fact, the super famous designer William Morris, whose family, by the way, owned the country's biggest arsenic production company, he publicly blew off the warnings for years. He actually said the doctors sounding the alarm were basically caught up in a witch fever. It took a huge public outcry to finally get him and the rest of the industry to stop using this deadly stuff. And the poisons in the walls weren't just about looking pretty. Fast forward to the Edwardian era, and there's a new wonder material everyone's using for insulation. It's called vermiculite. And get this, one single mine in Montana was the source for more than 70% of all the vermiculite sold in the US. The problem? That exact same mine had a huge deposit of asbestos, and that asbestos contaminated all of the insulation that was being poured into attics and homes all over the country. And this is one of those dangers that is absolutely still with us today. The EPA is super clear on this. If you have an older home and you find this kind of pebbly insulation, you have to assume it's got asbestos in it. The scary part is when the fibers get in the air. So the #1 golden absolute rule is do not disturb it. Seriously, leave it alone. All right, let's leave the walls behind us and move on to the heart of the home, the kitchen. And in here, oh boy, the threats were coming from everywhere. They were in the food, they were in the brand new technology. It really did turn every single meal into a terrifying game of Russian roulette. So what was going on? Well, as cities got bigger and bigger, you didn't know the person who grew or made your food anymore. And some, less than honest merchants, saw a huge opportunity to make a quick buck by adulterating food. That's just a fancy word for adding cheap and a lot of times dangerous fillers. Your bread? It might be bulked up with stuff like alum or even plaster of Paris. And you know that bright yellow color in mustard? That could be coming from lead chromate. Yeah, the same stuff they used to paint school buses. You were eating paint pigment.
But maybe the most stomach-turning example of all was what they did to milk. To cover up the sour taste when it started to go bad, sellers would dump borax in it. This trick disguised the fact that the milk was often swarming with bacteria, specifically bovine tuberculosis. And the result? An estimated 500,000 children died, just from drinking contaminated milk. It's just staggering.
Okay, so moving into the Edwardian era, a new piece of technology comes along that promises to solve all this food spoilage nonsense, the refrigerator. But this was a serious luxury. I mean, we're talking more expensive than a Model T Ford. And this fancy new box in your kitchen, yeah, it brought a whole new set of deadly risks with it.
So here was the issue. These early refrigerators were just not sealed very well. And the chemicals they used to create the cold, they were things like ammonia, which is toxic and flammable, or sulfur dioxide, which is extremely toxic, or metal chloride. Yep, another poison. So just a tiny little leak could fill your kitchen with these explosive, poisonous gases. Your brand new modern convenience could literally become a death trap. All right,
Speaking of modern marvels, let's talk about the next big thing to enter the home: electricity. I mean, can you imagine? It must have seemed like actual magic, a clean, amazing source of energy. The problem was, nobody really understood it yet. It was totally new and dangerously unregulated, and they were piping this force right into people's living rooms.
You just have to look at the difference between early wiring and what we have today. It's shocking. Back then, you had knob and tube wiring. The insulation on the wires was literally just cloth or paper. And the most important part? There was no ground wire. That's the third wire we have today, the one that's specifically there to protect you from being electrocuted. They just didn't have it. And think about this. Most homes barely had any outlets. So what did people do? They ran everything from a single light socket hanging from the ceiling. You'd have these crazy adapters plugged in, with wires going to an iron, some curling tongs, maybe a radio, a heater. It created this thing people called a Christmas tree of plugs, and it was an insane fire hazard. It would completely overload these primitive circuits, making the wires get super hot, melt, and, you guessed it, start fires inside the walls.
Okay, so we've gone from a very visible danger like fire to one that's completely invisible. For the last stop on our tour, we're heading down to the furnace, because this is the source of a threat that is still one of the most serious hidden killers in homes today.
We're talking about carbon monoxide, or CO. You've probably heard it called the silent killer, and there's a very good reason for that. It's a gas you can't see, you can't smell, you can't taste, and pretty much any appliance in your house that burns fuel, your furnace, your water heater, your fireplace, can produce it if something goes wrong, and it can go from safe to deadly in just minutes.
So how does this poison gas actually get into your living space? Well, this right here is usually the culprit. Buried deep inside your furnace, there's a metal part called a heat exchanger. Now, its only job is to keep the toxic gases from the fire separate from the clean, warm air that gets blown through your house. It's the only barrier. But after years of heating up and cooling down, that metal gets tired and it can crack. And when it cracks, deadly CO gas leaks right into the air you're breathing.
The good news is your house might actually give you some warning signs. So you want to look for things like soot stains around the furnace itself. Check the flame in the burner. It's supposed to be a nice, steady blue. If you see a flame that's yellow or kind of flickering all over the place, that is a huge red flag. Even things like the air in your house feeling stale or seeing a lot of moisture on the inside of your windows can be clues. And it's not just the house. Your own body will give you warning signs. But this is where it gets really tricky. The symptoms of CO poisoning are things like a dull headache, feeling dizzy, nauseous. Sound familiar? Yeah, it sounds exactly like the flu, and that's why it's so dangerous. But here is the one crucial difference. If you notice that your flu symptoms get better when you leave the house and then get worse again when you come back, that is a giant red flag. You need to get out immediately.
Wow. So, we've seen poison in the wallpaper, poison in our food, invisible poison gas coming from the furnace. This whole tour through the past really just goes to show you how incredibly far we've come, how much safer our homes are today. And the thing is, the only reason our homes are so much safer is because of all those past tragedies. The horror of adulterated food, that led to pure food laws. The constant threat of fire from bad wiring, that's why we have modern electrical codes. The terrifying silent killer in the furnace, that's why we now have mandatory CO detectors. Every single safety standard that we just take for granted today was a lesson learned the hard way, paid for by people in the past.
And that really just leaves us with one last big question. We've managed to get rid of all those killers from the past. But it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's around us right now? What seemingly harmless stuff that we use every single day will be the subject of an explainer just like this one, 100 years from now? What hidden killers are we living with that we don't even know about yet?